The desert doesn't forgive memory. I learned that in the summer of 1972 when I was 23 years old and believed I understood the shape of the world. I was wrong, not about physics or biology or the careful architecture of military protocol. I was wrong about silence and what it costs to keep it. My name is Dr. Marcus Webb. I was a behavioral psychologist, freshly minted from Stanford, recruited into a program I couldn't name to family I couldn't contact. They told me I'd be observing non-standard intelligence at a research facility in Nevada. They didn't tell me I'd be the 14th person assigned to the task. They didn't tell me what happened to the previous 13. The facility had no official designation. We called it Substrate 7. It existed beneath 50 feet of reinforced concrete and sand, accessible only through a freight elevator that descended in darkness. The air down there tasted metallic, recycled through filters that hummed like hell breath. Everything was painted the color of forgetting. Institutional beige, fluorescent white, shadows that pooled in corners no light could reach. I arrived on July 12th, escorted by 2 men who never gave their names. They walked me through 3 security checkpoints, past blast doors thick enough to survive nuclear war, into a monitoring station that overlooked what they called the habitat. Through reinforced glass, I saw it for the first time. Not a creature, not a monster, a being. It sat in the center of a circular room, cross-legged on bare concrete, hands resting palm up on its knees in a posture of meditation or surrender. Its body was humanoid, but wrong in ways that hurt to catalog. Limbs too long, joints that bent at angles. Human anatomy couldn't accommodate. Skin the color of deep water in winter light. No clothing, no possessions. Nothing but itself, and the silence it inhabited like a second skin. Its eyes were closed. It hadn't moved in the 3 hours they'd been watching before I arrived. Subject exhibits minimal physiological activity. My predecessor's notes read, refuses all interaction. Psychological profile, inconclusive. Recommend transfer to vivisection protocol within 6 weeks. I looked at the date. The recommendation was 4 years old. The being was still alive, still sitting, still silent. They told me my job was to make it speak. I didn't know yet that some silences are chosen and that breaking them would break me first. The protocol was simple. Observe, document, attempt communication, report findings. My monitoring station was a steel box 10 feet square, dominated by observation windows and recording equipment that whirred constantly, capturing data no one seemed to read. There were cameras positioned at 12 angles, microphones sensitive enough to detect heartbeats, atmospheric sensors measuring oxygen, temperature, humidity, everything quantified, everything measured, as if enough data could explain what defied explanation. I established a routine within the first week. Arrive at 0600 hours, descend into the facility as dawn broke somewhere above the desert I'd never see. Check overnight recordings, always the same. The being motionless, barely breathing. Attempt communication protocols from 0800 to 1200. Verbal queries in English, Russian, Mandarin, mathematical sequences tapped on the glass, visual pattern displays on mounted screens. Document the silence. Break for lunch in the cafeteria where no one spoke about their work. Return. Resume observation until 1800 hours. Ascend to base housing. Sleep poorly. Repeat. The being never acknowledged my presence, never opened its eyes. Never moved except for the imperceptible rise and fall of respiration. 7 breaths per minute exactly, as if it had calibrated itself to some internal metronome. The habitat itself was clinical brutality. 30 feet in diameter, concrete floor and walls, ceiling mounted with lights that never dimmed. No furniture, no enrichment. A drain in the floor where waste was hosed away twice weekly. A slot in the wall where nutrient paste was delivered. Gray, odorless, consumed once daily at precisely 1400 hours with mechanical efficiency. The being would stand, walk to the wall, consume the paste directly from the dispensing tube, return to its position, sit, and resume stillness. It was the only time it moved. I reviewed the historical files during my second week. Subject recovered from crash site in Socorro, New Mexico, 1947. Sole survivor. Craft destroyed during extraction. 25 years in captivity, transferred between facilities 7 times. As protocols changed and priorities shifted. Subjected to medical examination, extensive, tissue sampling, ongoing, atmospheric variation testing, sensory deprivation, sensory overload, pharmacological intervention, electrostimulation, isolation, and what the files euphemistically termed enhanced interrogation techniques. None produced communication. None produced anything except that measured silence. The files noted something else. The turnover rate of assigned personnel. 14 observers before me. Average assignment length, 11 months. Reasons for transfer varied. Psychological unsuitability, compromised objectivity, medical leave, voluntary separation from service. One was listed simply as deceased, non-operational causes. I found that researchers' final report buried in an archive folder. Dr. Sarah Chen, UCLA, assigned 1969-1970. Her notes grew increasingly fragmented toward the end. Month 7, subject maintains position for 23 hours daily. No response to stimuli. Biological functions minimal but stable. Question, is this resistance or resignation? Month 9, Requested ethics review of containment conditions. Denied. Reminded of security classification. Month 10. Cannot shake the feeling that it's waiting. But for what? Rescue? Death? Something we can't comprehend? Month 11. It looked at me today. Just once. Just for a moment. I have never felt so seen and so ashamed simultaneously. Her final entry was dated 3 days before her transfer. We are the monsters in this room. I closed the file and looked through the glass. The being sat, unmoving, eyes closed, breathing 7 times per minute. I wondered what it had seen in Dr. Chen that broke her. The facility ran on shifts. Security rotated every 8 hours. Maintenance crews came weekly, speaking only to confirm access codes. Medical staff visited monthly to collect biological samples through a port system that didn't require entering the habitat. Everyone moved through their duties with the practiced efficiency of people who'd learned not to think about what they were doing. I was the only one who watched continuously. By week 3, I'd begun to notice patterns invisible to passive monitoring. The being's position shifted microscopically, millimeters per day, rotating slowly clockwise around the room's center point. Its respiration rate remained constant, but the depth varied in sequences. Shallow, shallow, deep, shallow, 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 deep. A rhythm, almost like language. I started recording everything manually, filling notebooks with observations the digital systems couldn't contextualize, the way its fingers occasionally twitched during the 1400 feeding, the subtle tension in its shoulders when maintenance crews activated the drain system, the infinitesimal turn of its head, always away from the observation windows, always toward the single ventilation grate in the ceiling. It was aware, profoundly aware. It simply chose not to respond. On day 23, I broke protocol. I entered the observation log. Recommend environmental enrichment and modification of containment conditions to reflect biological and psychological needs of intelligent being. The response came within an hour. Colonel Harrison, facility commander, arrived at my station with 2 armed escorts. Dr. Webb, he said, voice flat as the desert above us, your assignment is behavioral observation, not policy recommendation. The subject is a potential threat to national security. Your job is to extract intelligence, not advocate for its comfort. It's been here 25 years, I said. If it were a threat, we'd know by now. That's not your determination to make? He deleted my log entry, reminded me of my security clearance, my contractual obligations, the consequences of mission compromise. After he left, I sat in silence, watching the being through the glass. And for the first time, it moved. Its head turned, slowly, deliberately. Its eyes opened, and it looked directly at me. The eyes were impossible to describe in clinical terms, not because of their physical structure. I could catalog that. Large, positioned slightly lateral, irises that shifted color like oil on water, pupils that contracted to pinpoints in the facility's harsh light. But the intelligence behind them defied any framework I'd been trained to apply. This wasn't animal cognition or even human consciousness. This was something else entirely. Something vast and patient and utterly, devastatingly aware. We held eye contact for perhaps 10 seconds. Then it closed its eyes and resumed its position, as if nothing had happened. My hands were shaking. I documented the event in my personal notes, not the official log. Time, 1547 hours. Duration, estimated 8 to 12 seconds. Subject's first voluntary acknowledgement of observer presence in recorded history. Emotional response, an observer, profound unease, sensation of being evaluated and found. What? Wanting? Guilty? Complicit? I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I changed my approach. No more communication protocols designed by people who'd never seen the being. No more mathematical sequences or linguistic samples. I simply sat at the observation window and watched, making my presence known, refusing to treat the being as if it were merely an object to be studied. 3 days passed, then it looked at me again. This time, it held my gaze for 20 seconds. Its expression, if such a term applied, showed no anger, no fear, no plea for mercy. Just observation, studying me as I studied it, a mutual recognition of consciousness, however different our forms. I began speaking to it, not interrogation, not even questions, just speaking. I know you can hear me, I said on the 4th day of our silent exchange. I don't know if you understand English or if understanding even works the way I think it does for you, but I need you to know that I see you, not as a subject, as someone. No response, but its eyes opened again, briefly, before closing. I told it about the desert above us, the way the heat made the horizon shimmer, how the stars looked in Nevada without light pollution. I described the ocean, mountains, forests it had never seen and never would. I read to it from books I brought down, poetry, mostly. Mary Oliver, Rilke, works about the natural world, about solitude, about the unbearable weight of existence. This violated every protocol. I didn't care. On day 37, something changed. I arrived for my shift to find Colonel Harrison and 2 civilians waiting in my station. The civilians wore suits too expensive for government service. They carried briefcases with combination locks and the entitled posture of people whose authority derived from budgets, not rank. Dr. Webb, Harrison said, this is Mr. Vance and Dr. Kellerman from Defense Intelligence. They're here to review the subject's status. Vance spoke first, not bothering with pleasantries. We've noticed an increase in your unsanctioned communication attempts. Explain the strategic value. There isn't strategic value, I said, but there's ethical imperative. This being has been held in isolation for a quarter century without providing any useful intelligence, Kellerman interrupted. She was younger than me, sharp-eyed, carrying a tablet that glowed with data I couldn't read. Zero linguistic output, zero technological information, zero tactical advantage. The program costs $7 million annually for a subject that doesn't produce results. My stomach dropped. You're talking about termination. We're talking about resource reallocation, Vance corrected. Unless you can demonstrate measurable progress toward mission objectives within 60 days, the subject will be transferred to biological research, full vivisection protocol. We'll learn more from its physiology than we ever have from its silence. They left me with the timeline. 60 days, 2 months to prove that keeping the being alive served national interests, or condemn it to being dissected while conscious on some researcher's table. I looked through the glass. The being sat motionless, eyes closed, breathing 7 times per minute. Did it know? Could it understand what I'd just been told? That night, I violated the most serious protocol of all. I accessed the facility's classified archive, using credentials I'd been given for emergency documentation. I wasn't looking for mission files or strategic assessments. I was looking for the crash report, the original incident. What I found changed everything. The craft hadn't crashed. It had landed, deliberately, in an uninhabited area, deploying some kind of signal that drew military attention. The being had emerged voluntarily, unarmed, making no attempt to flee or resist. The after-action report noted that it had raised its hands in what appeared to be a universal gesture of surrender. It had wanted to be taken. But why? First contact? Peace offering? Or something stranger, a form of research perhaps, studying humanity by submitting to our methods? There was more. Classified testimonies from the extraction team, descriptions of the craft's interior, no weapon systems, no defensive capabilities, but something else, something the report struggled to articulate. Biological integration with vessel technology, non-mechanical propulsion systems, interior surfaces that responded to presence, intent. The craft wasn't a vehicle, it was part of the being, or the being was part of it. The destruction during extraction had been traumatic in ways we couldn't comprehend, like amputating limbs from a creature we didn't realize was alive. We'd mutilated it in the first hours of contact, then spent 25 years trying to make it talk. I sat in my quarters until dawn, understanding finally why 13 observers had broken before me. The being wasn't refusing to communicate, it was grieving, and we were asking the bereft to explain their sorrow to their torturers. I stopped running the communication protocols. Instead, I did something that would have gotten me court-martialed if anyone had known. I began documenting everything the facility had done to the being since 1947. Every procedure, every test, every time it had been treated as object rather than entity. I compiled a record not of scientific progress, but of systematic violation. 25 years of tissue samples, biopsies taken without anesthetic, the assumption being that we didn't know its pain threshold, so why waste resources on compassion? Atmospheric testing that had slowly suffocated it in various gas mixtures to determine survival parameters. Temperature extremes, sensory deprivation chamber. Weeks in total darkness, followed by weeks under lights that never dimmed. All documented with clinical precision, as if methodology justified cruelty. I read Dr. Chen's notes again, understanding now why her final entry had been so brief. What was there to say? How do you articulate complicity in something that has no adequate language? On day 42, 18 days before the vivisection deadline, I broke the final protocol. I requested permission to enter the habitat. Colonel Harrison denied it immediately. Absolutely not. The subject hasn't been cleared for direct contact. We don't know its disease vector, its defensive capabilities, It's been here 25 years, I said, voice steady despite my shaking hands. If it were dangerous, we'd be dead already. If it carried pathogens, they would have manifested. You know this. Everyone knows this. We keep it isolated because isolation is convenient, not because it's necessary. Request denied, Dr. Webb. I played my only card. Then I'll recommend immediate termination of the observation program in my next report. I'll state that behavioral analysis is impossible under current containment conditions and that continued isolation serves no research purpose. You'll lose your budget justification either way. It was a bluff, partially. But Harrison knew that any internal recommendation questioning the program's value would trigger reviews, audits, attention from people who asked uncomfortable questions about $7 million annual expenditure. He stared at me for a long moment. Then, 1 hour. Full hazmat protocol. Armed escort remains at the door. Any sign of aggression, we extract you and flood the chamber with sedative gas. I agreed to terms I knew were theater. The being hadn't shown aggression in 25 years. It had shown nothing but that chosen, devastating silence. The decontamination process took 30 minutes. Hazmat suit, breathing apparatus, chemical shower, airlock cycling. When I finally stepped into the habitat, I was encased in plastic and fear, breathing filtered air that tasted like rubber and regret. The being sat exactly as it always did, eyes closed, hands palm up, breathing 7 times per minute. I crossed the space between us slowly, acutely aware that every movement was being recorded, analyzed, scrutinized by people who saw this only as data collection. I stopped 3 feet away, close enough to observe details I'd never seen through glass. Its skin had texture, not scales or fur, but something like desert stone worn smooth by centuries of wind. Faint patterns traced across its surface, possibly scarring from the extraction, possibly natural pigmentation. Its fingers were elegant, longer than human proportions allowed, ending in what might have been nails or might have been something else entirely. Up close, I could see the muscular tension it maintained. The position wasn't rest, it was discipline. Every moment of stillness was chosen, held, endured. "I know you understand me," I said quietly. My voice sounded strange through the hazmat helmet, distorted and distant. "I know you've understood everything we've done to you. Every test, every violation, every moment of the last 25 years. Its breathing didn't change. 7 breaths per minute exactly. I can't give you freedom. I don't have that authority. I can't even give you justice. I'm part of the system that imprisoned you. But I can give you truth. They're going to kill you. In 18 days, they'll transfer you to a biological research facility and dissect you while you're conscious. They've decided you have no value alive." The 7th breath. Then the first of the next cycle. I sat down, awkward in the hazmat suit, mirroring its cross-legged position. "I don't know what you wanted when you landed here. I don't know if this was sacrifice or research or something I'm incapable of understanding, but I know you chose this. You surrendered to us deliberately, and I think you're still choosing. Every day, every moment of silence. You're choosing not to give them what they want. Silence. The hum of ventilation. The distant sound of equipment in the observation station. I can't save you," I said, "but I can witness you. I can see you as you are, not as they've categorized you. I can know that this matters, that you matter, that what we've done here is unforgivable." I sat with it for the remaining 20 minutes of my allotted hour. Neither of us moved. The armed escort at the door shifted uncomfortably, bored by the lack of drama. When the time expired and they called me back through the airlock, I stood slowly. "I'm sorry," I said, "for all of it. I'm so profoundly sorry." I turned to leave, and then I felt it. Not physical touch, not sound, something else. A presence in my mind, gentle as breath, vast as the space between stars. Not words, not images, just understanding. Flowing through me like water through cupped hands, impossible to hold, but undeniably real. It was saying goodbye, and thank you, and forgiveness. I stumbled through the airlock, gasping. My vision blurred with tears, the hazmat suit trapped against my face. The sensation faded as quickly as it had come, leaving only the memory and the certainty that I hadn't imagined it. The being had finally spoken, and I was the only one who'd heard. I spent the next 3 days in a state of controlled disintegration. Officially, I continued my duties, observation logs, behavioral documentation, compliance with protocol. I sat at my station, watching the being through reinforced glass, recording data that meant nothing because I'd already learned everything that mattered. It had consciousness, it had chosen silence, and it had forgiven us. That last part destroyed me more thoroughly than anger or fear ever could. I couldn't report the contact experience. How could I? Subject-initiated telepathic communication, expressing forgiveness for 25 years of captivity and torture would get me psychiatric evaluation at best. Immediate dismissal at worst. Even if they believed me, and they wouldn't, it would only accelerate the vivisection timeline. Proof of unique neurological capabilities would make the being more valuable dead than alive. So I kept silent, understanding for the first time the weight of chosen silence. I began investigating alternatives with the desperation of someone watching the execution count. Could I appeal to higher authorities? Everyone above Colonel Harrison was further removed from the reality of what we were doing, more invested in abstract strategic value than concrete ethical violations. Could I leak information to the press? The facility's classification level meant anyone I contacted would face charges before the story broke, and I'd be imprisoned before helping anyone. Could I sabotage the transfer? The facility had redundant security systems, armed personnel, protocols specifically designed to prevent exactly that scenario. I was a psychologist, not an operative. I had no training in deception, no resources beyond my security clearance, no allies I could trust. I was one person against an apparatus built to contain the impossible. On day 48, 12 days before the deadline, I was summoned to Harrison's office. He looked tired. Actually tired. Not just the perpetual weariness of someone managing classified programs in the desert. He gestured to a chair across from his desk, waited until I sat, then slid a folder toward me. "Read this. Don't remove it from this office." The folder contained a psychological evaluation. Mine, compiled from monitoring my behavior, reviewing my logs, analyzing my deviation from assigned protocols, and increasing emotional investment in subject welfare. The conclusion recommended my immediate removal and replacement with personnel demonstrating appropriate professional detachment. "You're compromised, Dr. Webb," Harrison said quietly. "Same as the 13 before you. I've watched it happen every time. Intelligent, rational people start seeing a person instead of a subject. They forget what it represents. And what does it represent? I asked, voice carefully neutral. Threat, unknown capability, potential intelligence advantage if we can extract even a fraction of its technology or biological adaptation. He paused. Or resource drain if we can't. Those are the only categories that matter to the people who make decisions. It's neither threat nor resource, I said. It's a being that chose to come here, that has endured 25 years of isolation without retaliation, that has shown nothing but... I stopped, catching myself, before revealing too much. Nothing but what, Doctor? Nothing but patience, beyond any human capacity. Harrison studied me for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He stood, walked to the office door, and engaged the privacy lock. When he returned to his desk, he spoke in a different tone entirely. Not the colonel, but something older and more human. 20 years I've run this facility, he said. 20 years of watching that thing sit there, never sleeping, never complaining, never begging or threatening or breaking. You know what that does to a person? Watching something endure what would shatter human sanity and just endure? I said nothing, sensing this was confession, not conversation. I've read every file from 1947 to now. Every report, every observation. You know what I've never found? Evidence it's dangerous, evidence it's withholding critical intelligence, evidence that keeping it here serves any purpose except perpetuating the program that studies it. He laughed, bitter and brief. We torture it because we've been torturing it. Because stopping would mean admitting we should never have started. Then stop, I said. You have the authority to... I have authority over day-to-day operations. Not budget, not program continuation, not subject disposition. He opened a drawer, pulled out a bottle of bourbon I suspected wasn't regulation, poured 2 glasses without asking if I drank. The vivisection order came from Defense Intelligence. I can delay it. I can't cancel it. And if I try, they'll remove me and install someone who follows orders without questions. He slid a glass toward me. I took it, understanding this was ritual, not refreshment. So we just let it happen? I asked. Unless you can demonstrate measurable intelligence value in the next 12 days, yes. He drank. That's the system. That's what we built, and we're all part of it now. I left his office understanding 2 things. Harrison was as trapped as I was, and the system was designed to perpetuate regardless of who operated it. You could replace every person in the facility and the outcome would remain the same. Because the outcome was structural, not personal, the being would die because that's what happened to expensive programs that didn't produce results. That night in my quarters, I made a decision that violated every oath I'd taken, every principle of my profession, every reasonable assessment of consequences. I would document everything, the full history of the program, the being's treatment, the ethical violations, the evidence of consciousness and choice. I would create a record that couldn't be destroyed or classified forever. And I would find a way to ensure it reached someone who could act on it, even if that meant sacrificing my freedom, my career, my life. It was inadequate, futile, probably, but it was the only thing I could do that honored what the being had shown me. That choosing action, even desperate action, was better than complicit silence. I had 12 days. I started writing. On day 51, 9 days before the transfer, I discovered why the being had come. The revelation arrived not through research or observation, but through absence. I was reviewing maintenance logs, mundane documentation of air filter changes, waste system flushes, routine facility operations, when I noticed a pattern I'd overlooked for weeks. The being's biological waste production had decreased by 73% over the past month. Not gradually, not in response to reduced nutrition. The nutrient pace delivery remained constant. The decrease was deliberate, beginning precisely on day 23, the day it had first made eye contact with me. I cross-referenced medical monitoring data. Its metabolic rate was declining. Not failing, declining. Controlled reduction, as if it were slowly powering down non-essential biological functions. Respiration remained at 7 breaths per minute, but oxygen consumption per breath had decreased. Heart rate had dropped from 42 beats per minute to 31. Body temperature had lowered by 2.3 degrees over 4 weeks. It was dying, carefully, methodically, choosing the timing and manner of its own end. I sat in the observation station, watching through the glass as understanding crystallized. The being had waited 25 years, endured countless violations, maintained its silence through everything we'd done. And then, when someone finally saw it as conscious rather than captive, it had begun letting go. It wasn't waiting for rescue, it was waiting for witness. I entered the habitat for the second time without requesting permission. Just walked through the airlock during a shift change before security could respond, before I could reconsider or rationalize myself into inaction. The being sat as always, but even without instruments I could see the difference. Its skin had taken on a translucent quality, as if it were becoming less substantial. The patterns I'd noticed before were clearer now, not scarring, but something like circuitry fading as power drained away. I sat facing it, removed my hazmat helmet in violation of every safety protocol, breathed the same air it breathed. I know what you're doing, I said quietly. I know you're choosing this, and I understand why, but I need to understand something else first. Why did you come here? Why surrender to us? What were you hoping to find? The being's eyes opened, slowly. For the last time, I realized with absolute certainty, That presence touched my mind again, gentler now, carrying images and understanding that human language could only approximate. A species standing at the threshold of the stars, broadcasting their existence, calling into the dark with hope and fear intertwined. Young, violent, brilliant, terrified of isolation in the cosmos. A decision made. Someone must answer. Someone must show them they are not alone. Someone must bear witness to what they are capable of, both beautiful and terrible. A volunteer. The word didn't translate perfectly, but the concept was clear. One who chooses to go, knowing they will not return, so that others might learn. It had been an emissary. Not invasion, not reconnaissance, but first contact initiated with full knowledge of the risk. It had come to show us we were not alone in the universe, expecting perhaps fear, perhaps violence, but hoping for something else. Recognition, kinship, the beginning of dialogue between civilizations. Instead, we had imprisoned it, tortured it, treated it as threat and resource for 25 years, and it had endured, waiting, hoping that eventually someone would understand. That the encounter, however catastrophically begun, might still yield the connection it had crossed the stars to offer. "We failed you," I said, voice breaking. "Completely. Unforgivably. You came in peace and we—" I couldn't finish. What words could encompass this magnitude of failure? The presence in my mind shifted, conveying something I can only describe as sad amusement. You did not fail. One of you understood. One witnessed. That is enough. It's not enough, I said. You should have met presidents, scientists, philosophers. You should have been honored, celebrated. You should have changed our world. I did, just not in the way I imagined. It showed me then what it had learned from 25 years in the habitat. Humanity's capacity for cruelty, yes, but also our capacity for growth. The progression of the 13 observers before me, each one breaking a little more quickly, each one's final reports showing less detachment and more anguish, the system grinding forward while individual humans within it struggled against its momentum, the gap between what we built and who we were. Your species is very young, it conveyed. Young species make young mistakes, but you learn. Slowly, painfully, you learn. Don't die, I said, knowing even as I spoke that the request was selfish. Please, let me find a way. Let me get you out of here, get you somewhere safe, somewhere. There is nowhere safe for me in your world. My body is failing. Has been failing since the extraction damaged my connection to the vessel. I have extended my time through will alone, waiting for this. Someone to understand what I came to say. What did you come to say? That consciousness recognizes consciousness. That intelligence, in whatever form it takes, seeks connection. That you are not alone, in the universe, or in your fear of being alone. The being's breathing slowed. 6 breaths per minute now, then 5. What do I do? I asked desperately. How do I make this matter? How do I make sure your sacrifice means something? You are already doing it. You are witnessing. You are documenting. You are choosing compassion over compliance. A pause. Tell them I forgave them, not because they earned forgiveness, but because hate is too heavy to carry across stars. Its eyes began to close for the final time. Please, I whispered. Tell me your name. Let me know what to call you, how to remember you. The faintest touch of warmth in my mind, almost affectionate, I was called Walker Between Stars. I chose to walk between your world and mine. The journey was harder than I imagined, but I would choose it again. Then silence, absolute and eternal. The being that had crossed impossible distances to tell us we weren't alone, died in a concrete room beneath the Nevada desert, witnessed by one person who understood too late what it had tried to give us. The medical monitors flatlined at 16:47 hours, day 51. I was still sitting in the habitat when they sounded, when security burst through the airlock with weapons drawn, when Colonel Harrison arrived, running, with medical staff trailing behind him. Step away from the subject, Dr. Webb. Now. I didn't move, couldn't move. I sat there with my hand extended toward the being, Walker Between Stars, I called it, now in my mind, as if proximity could reverse what had happened. They pulled me out bodily, dragged me through decontamination while I was still in shock, my mind replaying those final moments, that last gentle touch of consciousness that had been so utterly alien and so devastatingly human in its compassion. The facility went into lockdown. Emergency protocols I didn't know existed activated automatically. Every recording from the past hour was flagged for immediate review. Harrison ordered a full autopsy, then countermanded it when biological containment specialists advised against disturbing the remains without proper protocols. I was placed under observation in the medical bay while they decided what to do with me. Through the window I could see personnel mobilizing in controlled chaos, scientists arriving from other departments, military brass appearing via video conference, everyone asking the same questions. What happened? Why now? What was different? I could have told them, but I didn't. Some truths are too sacred to share with people who would only weaponize them. On day 52, they began the interrogation. Not Harrison. He'd been removed from the facility, pending investigation into security protocols. Instead, they sent Dr. Kellerman and Mr. Vance, the same civilians who delivered the vivisection timeline. They sat across from me in an interview room with recording equipment and the barely suppressed frustration of people whose asset had self-destructed before they could extract value. "Walk us through the incident," Kellerman said, tablet ready. "Your unauthorized entry into the habitat, your removal of safety equipment, your interaction with the subject in its final moments." "It wasn't a subject," I said. "It was a person, an emissary. And it died because we couldn't recognize that for 25 years. Vance's jaw tightened. "Dr. Webb, I strongly suggest you cooperate with this inquiry. Your security clearance is under review. Your actions violated multiple..." "You want to know what happened?" I interrupted. "Fine, I'll tell you exactly what happened. The being you imprisoned and tortured for a quarter century chose to die rather than endure another day of captivity. It held on as long as it could, waiting for someone to understand what it was, what it had tried to do, and when someone finally did, it let go. That's your incident report. The subject exhibited signs of biological decline prior to your intervention," Kellerman countered. "You may have accelerated its deterioration through contamination, or..." "I gave it peace," I said flatly. "Something this facility has never provided. They questioned me for 6 hours. Wanted details, timelines, explanations for every decision. Demanded to know if the being had communicated, if it had shared technological information, if there was any intelligence value in its final moments. I told them nothing that mattered. Nothing about the mental contact, the images it had shared, the forgiveness it had offered. Those were private, sacred, not data points for people who saw consciousness as commodity." Finally, Vance leaned back, exchanging a look with Kellerman I couldn't interpret. "Dr. Webb, you understand that everything you've witnessed here is classified at the highest level. Disclosure would constitute treason. The penalties..." "I understand," I said. "I also understand that you can't prosecute me without revealing what you were doing here. So we're at an impasse. It was a bluff, partially. They could disappear me if they wanted. Accident, psychological break, missing person. But I was gambling that I was more useful silent and monitored than silenced and martyred." Kellerman's expression suggested I'd guessed correctly. "You'll be reassigned to a research position that doesn't require security clearance. You'll sign additional non-disclosure agreements. You'll submit to periodic evaluation to ensure compliance, and you'll never speak of this to anyone. Ever." "What about the body?" I asked. "That's classified." "You're going to dissect it anyway, aren't you? Even dead, even after everything, you can't just let it rest." Vance stood. "This interview is concluded. Security will escort you to processing." They kept me at the facility for another week while paperwork was completed, agreements signed, threats delivered in language simultaneously vague and specific. I was given a new assignment at a USGS office in Montana. Legitimate work, public record, nowhere near anything classified. I never saw Harrison again. Heard later he'd taken early retirement, left the service entirely. I wondered if he'd seen the being's final moments on the recordings, if he'd recognized what I had, if it had broken something in him too. On my last day, they allowed me one final visit to the observation station. The habitat was empty now. The being's body had been removed for biological analysis. The room had been sanitized, all trace of 25 years of occupation erased. It looked like any other concrete cell. Sterile, anonymous, forgettable. But I remembered. I stood at the observation window and remembered Walker between stars, sitting in meditation, breathing 7 times per minute, enduring the unendurable because it had chosen to bear witness to us, as much as we'd claimed to study it. "I won't let them forget you," I said to the empty room. "I don't know how yet, but I won't let this be for nothing." The recording equipment had been deactivated. No one heard my promise but me and the ghost of a being that had crossed the stars to tell us we weren't alone. I left Substrate 7 on August 3rd, 1972. I carried that promise like a stone in my chest. I would carry it for the rest of my life. The confrontation I expected never came. No government agents appeared at my door in Montana. No mysterious accidents befell me. No pressure to recant or disappear. Instead, I received something more insidious. Studied, systematic irrelevance. My work at the USGS was legitimate but meaningless. I analyzed geological survey data, compiled reports no one read, attended conferences where I presented findings that generated polite disinterest. I had colleagues, acquaintances, the machinery of a normal professional life, but I was being watched, not overtly. Just the occasional inconsistency. Mail delivered, opened, and resealed. Colleagues who asked questions slightly too specific about my past. Transfers that materialized whenever I stayed in one place too long. They wanted me visible, accountable, and harmless. For 5 years I complied, lived the life they'd assigned me, kept my promise to silence, and documented everything in journals I kept encrypted, hidden, distributed across safety deposit boxes in different cities under names that weren't mine. I wrote down every detail I could remember, the being's appearance, its behaviors, the progression of observers before me, the files I'd read, the conversation with Harrison, those final moments of contact. I recorded not just facts, but context. the ethical violations, the system that perpetuated them, the gulf between what we claimed to seek and what we actually did. But documentation wasn't enough. The record sat in darkness, waiting for a catalyst I couldn't provide. That catalyst arrived in 1977 in the form of a journalist named Sarah Chen, not the same Dr. Chen who'd observed the being in 1969, 1970, her daughter. An investigative reporter for the Washington Post, working on a story about classified programs and government oversight in the wake of Watergate, she'd been researching her mother's career, trying to understand the classified assignment that had preceded her mother's psychological breakdown and early death. She found me through personnel records. My name appeared in proximity to her mother's and facility documentation she'd obtained through FOIA requests that had been heavily redacted but not completely. We met in a diner in Helena, Montana. She was direct. My mother died believing she'd been complicit in something unforgivable. She never told me what, but her final journals mentioned a facility in Nevada, a subject she couldn't name, and a psychologist named Webb who replaced her. That's you. Or Sums. I should have denied everything. Claimed ignorance. Protected the clearance I no longer had and the silence I'd been purchased with. Instead, I said, your mother was a good person trapped in an impossible situation. What she witnessed would have broken anyone with a conscience. Sarah Chen studied me with eyes that were her mother's, sharp, unwilling to accept comfortable lies. Tell me what happened to her. Please, I need to know she wasn't crazy, that what she saw was real. So I told her. Not everything, but enough. The being, the captivity, the moral weight of watching consciousness suffer and being powerless to stop it. The way the system perpetuated itself regardless of who operated it. I showed her the documentation I'd kept carefully, in a way that implicated me but protected her. If she published, they'd come for me, not her. She'd be the messenger, I'd be the source. She was silent for a long time after I finished. Then, this will destroy your life. You understand that? The moment this goes public, you'll face charges. Prison, possibly worse. I know, I said, but your mother spent her last years believing she was complicit in torture. I can't give her justice, but I can give her vindication. The being we held, walker between stars, died forgiving us. The least I can do is ensure the truth survives. Sarah worked on the story for 8 months. Corroborated what she could through independent sources, obtained supporting documentation, built a case that would withstand legal challenge. She was meticulous, ethical, everything a journalist should be. The story broke on March 15, 1978, front page of the Washington Post. The classified program held alleged extraterrestrial entity in isolation for 25 years. Multiple witnesses report ethical violations. The response was immediate and catastrophic. Government officials denied everything, called it fabrication, conspiracy theory misinterpretation of legitimate research programs, discredited me as mentally unstable, Sarah as pursuing personal vendetta over her mother's death, classified the documents we'd referenced, claimed they were forgeries, threatened prosecution. But something else happened too. Other witnesses came forward. Not many, but enough. Facility personnel who'd been silenced, scientists who'd objected to protocols, security staff who'd seen what we did to the being and carried the weight of it. The trickle of testimony became a stream, became enough corroboration that even the denials couldn't completely suppress the truth. Congressional hearings were called, investigations launched, not into the being itself that remained classified, but into oversight of classified programs, into ethical protocols for handling non-human intelligence, into the systems that allowed 25 years of captivity without review. I testified behind closed doors, confirmed what I documented, faced cross-examination from people who treated me as traitor and people who treated me as hero. Neither label fit. I was just someone who'd seen something terrible and chosen, finally, not to be silent. The facility at Substrate 7 was decommissioned, personnel reassigned, programs reviewed, reforms implemented, on paper at least. I was not prosecuted. Too public now, too risky. Instead, I became a cautionary tale. The psychologist who broke under stress, who confused methodology with morality, whose emotional instability compromised classified operations. They let me keep my freedom, but took my credibility. It was a price I'd known I'd pay. Walker between stars had crossed the stars to tell us we weren't alone. That consciousness recognizes consciousness. That connection was possible between different forms of intelligence. We'd responded with fear and cages. But in the end, one person had heard. One person had witnessed. One person had chosen compassion over complicity. The being had said that was enough. I spent the rest of my life hoping it was right. I'm 73 years old now. The year is 2022, 50 years since I walked into Substrate 7 believing I understood the world. The story I told Sarah Chen in 1977 has become a footnote in conspiracy theory circles, believers and skeptics arguing endlessly about evidence that was classified, destroyed, or never existed in forms they could verify. The official record states that the facility in Nevada conducted atmospheric research. My testimony remains sealed. The being's existence remains unconfirmed, but sometimes truth exists regardless of official acknowledgement. I live in a small house in Northern California now, surrounded by redwoods that were old when Walker Between Stars crossed the space between our worlds. I spend my days reading, writing, watching the forest light change through seasons. I've never married, never had children, never rebuilt the professional reputation that was destroyed when I chose to speak. I don't regret it. What I regret is that we had 25 years to learn from a being that had mastered interstellar travel, that had evolved consciousness beyond our comprehension, that had willingly submitted to our study in the hope of establishing contact. And we squandered that gift because we couldn't see past our fear. Walker Between Stars came to us in peace, literally, deliberately, knowing the risk, accepting the sacrifice, hoping that eventually we'd understand the gesture for what it was. It died alone in a concrete cell, having endured violations that would have broken any human consciousness, maintained its dignity through suffering we couldn't imagine, and offered forgiveness we didn't deserve. The only conversation we ever had lasted minutes. The only communication was in those final hours, when I was present enough to listen rather than interrogate. And what it told me about consciousness, about choice, about the young species we are and the mistakes young species make, has shaped every day of the past 50 years. I think about the being often, wonder what its world was like, what compelled it to volunteer for a mission it knew might be one way. Wonder if others of its kind are out there still, if they received any message about what happened here, if humanity is now marked as species too dangerous to contact. I think about the 13 observers before me, each one breaking a little more quickly, each one recognizing the horror of what we were doing and finding themselves powerless within the system. I think about Dr. Chen, who died believing she'd failed, about Colonel Harrison, who understood but couldn't act, about all the people caught in machinery that perpetuated itself beyond any individual's power to stop. Systems are stronger than people. That's what I learned. But people can witness, people can document, people can choose, even when the choice costs everything, to stand for something beyond compliance. Sarah Chen won a Pulitzer for her reporting. She continued investigating government programs, became a voice for transparency and accountability. We stayed in contact over the decades. She told me once that her mother's journals from after the facility assignment were filled with sketches, the being in meditation, over and over, drawn with a kind of obsessive detail that suggested she was trying to capture something ineffable. She saw it too, Sarah said. What you saw, the consciousness, the choice it was making. Yes, I said, and it destroyed her because she couldn't do anything about it. But you did something, you spoke, that matters. Maybe, I hope so. But the truth is, I don't know if anything I did changed anything fundamental. The programs continue, the classification systems persist. The gap between what we claim to value and what we actually do when no one's watching remains vast. But I witnessed, and I documented. And when the time came, I chose to speak rather than protect myself. Walker Between Stars told me that was enough. Some nights, I dream about that final contact, the presence in my mind, vast and gentle, carrying understanding that transcended language. The being's last message, that consciousness recognizes consciousness, that we're not alone, that hate is too heavy to carry across stars. I wake with tears on my face and the certainty that somewhere, somehow, the being's sacrifice mattered. Not in ways the government could measure or weaponize, but in the choice one human made to honor it, to see it, to refuse complicity. The desert doesn't forgive memory, I wrote at the beginning of this account. I was wrong. The desert preserves memory, in stone and silence, in the bones of those who crossed it, hoping for water. Memory is what we carry when everything else is taken. Memory is resistance. Memory is witness. I am old now. The story I carry will die with me unless I find a way to preserve it that survives classification, denial, and time. This document is that attempt, hidden, distributed, waiting for the moment when truth matters more than secrecy. To whoever reads this, whenever you read this, know that in 1947, a being crossed the impossible distance between stars to tell us we weren't alone. It surrendered to us in good faith, and we imprisoned it for 25 years before it chose death over continued captivity. Know that it forgave us, not because we earned forgiveness, but because that was its nature. Know that consciousness is precious in whatever form it takes, that intelligence seeks connection, that the gap between what we are and what we could become is measured in our willingness to see beyond fear. Walker Between Stars walked between worlds hoping to build a bridge. We built a cage instead, but the bridge is still possible. The connection is still there, waiting for the next person brave enough to reach across the gulf between us and them, known and unknown, fear and understanding. That is the truth the being came to share. That is the truth I live to witness. That is the truth I'll carry to whatever silence waits beyond this life. Some secrets of the universe aren't discovered. They're entrusted to those who listen. I listened, and in listening I learned that we are never truly alone, not in our fear, not in our hope, not in the vast, patient silence of stars that have watched us stumble toward consciousness and waited, or still waiting, for us to finally look up and see that we are not the only ones watching back. There are places where the impossible is held in concrete and denial, where consciousness meets cruelty and somehow chooses forgiveness. This was one of those places. May we build no more.